there's a million times that I was like, okay, I'm not drinking. A few days would go by, I would drink. Same thing. It would be this like repeated pattern. And when you're in that pattern, somebody like me can help you break that cycle because I've been there. And you're going to tell me what's going on with you in your personal life. And I'm going to be able to say, okay, this is what we need to change a little bit.
Welcome to Who Cares About My Story, the podcast on how sharing your personal brand story can impact your business. We will explore the perks and also the behind-the-scenes challenges of figuring out what to share. I'm your host, Reme Mancera, a personal brand strategist who loves finding the story connectors that illustrate the benefits of what you offer. And by the way, you don't need a Hollywood style for that. In case you ever wonder, remember, your story is relevant and worth telling. Hey there! Today's guest is Michelle Buonfiglio, also known as Sober Virgo Woman, a sobriety coach who helps women navigate moderating drinking or getting to sobriety. In this episode, she opens up about her own journey, from struggling with her relationship with alcohol to discovering the freedom of a sober life. Michelle talks about the powerful moments that changed everything and led her to become a sobriety coach. She also explains how important it is to find resources that resonate with you and to have a supportive community where you feel understood. Listen to how her personal story has allowed her to build strong connections with her clients and inspire them on their own paths to moderate or quit drinking. During this conversation, Michelle not only reflects on her experiences, but also shares practical tips and insights on what helped her to make the transition to a sober lifestyle. Don't miss it. Welcome to Who Cares About My Story. I am so happy to have you here, Michelle. Thank you for accepting this invitation.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So, could you please share who you are and what you do?
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Michelle, and I'm a sobriety coach, and I help women on an individualized plan to help them navigate either moderating drinking or getting to sobriety. I myself was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I'm now all about sharing my love of sobriety, the secret key that I never thought was possible.
Cool. So, can you tell us a bit about your story? How would you get to that point?
Sure, absolutely. So I struggled myself for, I believe, 6, 7, 8 years. I did not realize I was struggling. It was just that every couple months, something negative would happen that would have an impact on me. I wouldn't feel well the next day, or something I did that I was ashamed or embarrassed of. And I didn't know how to get help. I didn't realize I needed help. And then when I tried to get help, specifically from different programs, I did not feel that I was resonating with them. And so I really just kept saying, I'm going to do it on my own. I'm going to try to take a break. I'm going to try to just drink on the weekends. I am just going to try to drink at so and so's birthday. And that was just a fail over and over again. And around I would say 2017, actually 2015 was before I had graduated college. And I just said, if I'm going into a profession, I cannot wake up hungover, especially with the profession that I'm in. And that's not something, like, I need to be at my best. It's an emotionally draining job. I love what I do as an educator, but you need to be on at all times. And I started doing a little research, and I started finding things such as Dry July or Sober October or Dry January, where you take a break from drinking. You just, you make a goal and you take a break for, it's usually about 28, 29, 30 days, 31 days. And I just kept failing over and over again. I would get a few days here and there. But I just wasn't able to do it. And I just kept going on with my life and kind of kept it in the background. And then I found a couple podcasts. I've always been a podcast lover. And I found a Sober Girls Guide and I found Recovery Elevator. And starting to listen to those podcasts were extremely helpful because I started to realize I wasn't alone and that the program I did try isn't for everyone. And I learned that that was okay. And when I had gone to one of the meetings in the other company, I had gone to a meeting and somebody was sober for a year. And at that point, I really couldn't get past a week. And I remember just sobbing and just feeling so like I'm jealous. How did they get to a year? I can't even get past 3 or 4 days. However, I didn't want to be involved in that program. I didn't want to be there every single day doing all this hard work. I said there has to be an alternative. So, I would go to their meetings sometimes, which, would help hearing other people's stories, but I just did not. I refused to make a commitment like that. And I would say I'm going to have a glass of wine and I would drink the whole bottle, or I was never really a hard liquor kind of girl. I loved Prosecco and I loved cocktails and like the whole fancy fun part of it. And I found non-alcoholic drinks, which were like, a beer that was non-alcoholic that was like sitting in the back of a beer cooler forever, or Shirley Temple. And I was like, this sucks. Like, these are my options. And through Recovery Elevator and through a Sober Girls Guide, just listening to their podcasts and hearing other people in the same story, it started resonating with me more and more. My boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, but we would fight all the time about my drinking, and I did not realize how much of an impact it really was having on my life. I was not drinking every day, all day. I did not hit a quote unquote rock bottom. I did not go to rehab. I had a full-time job and I had a steady relationship and I have great family and friends. So the stereotypical part of me said I don't have a problem. Everybody else is doing the same thing. But on those podcasts, I remember hearing a woman, which was really inspiring to me. I don't have children, but her older son she had drank most of her son's life, and her son was 17, 18 at the time. And she was explaining her story that she kept telling her son, like, I'm going to stop drinking. And her son said, but how do I believe you? You've been saying that for 17 years. And it was an aha moment for me because I would say the same thing to my husband. Like, something awful would happen and I would say to him, I would say, like, I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to drink. And then I would drink. And so I learned, I was like, oh, it's not that he doesn't believe in me, right? But my actions, right, are speaking louder than my words. So that again was an eye opener. And then during COVID, it just so happened the beginning of 2020, Jessica from a Sober Girls Guide, the podcast, I was also in her community. And so she had done Zoom meetings and she just said, come hang out. Like, we're just women, we're just talking. And I hated the word sober, by the way. It terrified me. I hate the word alcoholic. I just, like, there's a lot of words that I don't agree with or don't associate with. Sober was a word I did not like. and now I know it's because it was fear. It was fear of the unknown, fear of thinking that this life was going to be so boring without alcohol. I was going to be the loser in the corner. I wasn't going to be invited to events. I would just, be just, I felt like I was going to be a loser. And that is not what my life is at all. Not even one little piece of it. And so, with those Zoom meetings that she was doing, and it was just women from all over the world, and it was it was I believe it was every Wednesday or Thursday. And so she started introducing us to mocktails, these non-alcoholic drinks like Athletic Brewing Company and Mingle and Moment and these other non-alcoholic companies that were like really delicious. And so I started purchasing them and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like this is not just Shirley Temple. This is not like a beer that tastes in my opinion not good and I can still have fun." Right? Like I'm still doing this with my fancy glass and I can still have a good time. So that was definitely a big turning point for me because I realized I still can hold a drink and go out and hang out. So that I would say was the really big turning point for me with mocktails and knowing that cool people don't drink and that it's not one way or the highway, that it
Mm.
wasn't something that I needed to, put in so much work with. I do believe that I definitely put in the work by being a sobriety coach and by sharing my story with the world. But to me, it's not work, it's love and passion, and it's feeding a different part of me.
Mm. And how did you get into becoming a sober coach?
Sure. So I became a sobriety coach a little bit after that. So I started really attending those Zoom meetings. And then in the beginning of, right around that same time, the beginning of the pandemic, right when the US was mandating, right when New York was mandating the N95 masks, we had a major trauma in our family. And I got very dark. I got very deep with the grief that our family was experiencing. It had nothing to do with COVID, but on top of that, that did not help because the world was shutting down. And I just got very dark and very deep and was drinking a lot. And so I would teach my kids during the day. And then at night, I would be on the phone or doing some paperwork or you know, but it was always like with drinking at night. I don't have children. I'm talking about the students I have as a classroom teacher. So I would take care of them during the day. And then after that, I would drink and I would figure out what I needed to do. And at the time, my husband was an essential worker and he had to get up for work every day at 5 a.m. And I would be out on our beautiful deck drinking and smoking cigarettes and trying to figure things out and struggle through my grief and just, drink. And because that was one thing that made me feel better. And then on top of the pandemic, everything just became so much easier as far as like how much you can, everything's delivered. You can just, get it and go, which was definitely not helpful in my situation. And then, you know, my husband started saying, like, we got to figure something out because we can't live like this. And I'm like, I don't care what you think. This is something that I this is the last thing I'm going to do right now is to stop drinking. And so he said that, you have to. This is like really hurting our relationship. And I didn't really care what he said. And I ended up moving out and I lived with a very good friend of mine and I started really drinking mocktails more and reflecting on what he was saying as much as I hated him at the time. The hate was mutual. So, and now our love is like beyond anything. But so I eventually got sober in May of 2020. So as awful as that situation was, it was the push I needed, because I think that if he did not push me, I think I could have gotten darker. I think because just my curiosity, I've always been a curious person, but in grief, it just took on a whole nother level. And I think that if that did not happen, I feel like things could have gotten much worse. So, and being in a different environment with my very good friend, and we were both teachers, so she would teach upstairs and I would teach downstairs, and her son was running around, and just being in that different environment. And she's amazing, she's beautiful, she's a wonderful human being, and she doesn't drink, so that helped as well. And I continued to go to the Zoom meetings with Jessica, and my sister had a weekly date with us where like we went to dinner there every week. So there was some, still some, and I was running, and so there was some consistency despite what was going on in the world and what was going on in our family. And then so I got sober in May of 2020, and I then in the following so then in June of 2021, Jessica from A Sober Girls Guide offered a sobriety coach certification course.
Mm.
And at that point, I was sober for a little under a year, or a little over a year. And I said, this is the best for me. I've always been in customer service and I love helping people. And I love my sobriety life, which is the last thing I would think. And I said, let me try this. Let me try this certification. And I really, really enjoyed it. I got to meet other women who were in the same boat as me. And it was just really beautiful because for so long I thought AA was my only option. And it was just really nice to know other women were struggling like I was and didn't want that route either. And it's just because it's such a stereotypical thing, because it's so accepted, drinking is so pushed and accepted in society, that's why a lot of this was happening. So I got my certification, but I didn't do anything with it at the time because I didn't feel that I had enough behind me. Even though at that point I was over a year, I just didn't feel confident enough to teach and coach other people because I felt like I was still learning. I just didn't want to be like anybody who can just coach anybody. And I know that it can be a serious, it could be something very serious. I am not a mental health provider. I am not a social worker. I'm an educator, but, and I love people and I want to help them, but I don't have, any kind of affiliation like that. So I did not want to put myself in that situation nor somebody else and, fail them. Or also just, I have my master's in education and special education, and now my certification to teach ENL. And I just am the type of person that wants to be legit. I don't want to just give you some BS that I've learned or that so then I I just held on to it. I came up with the name Sober Virgo Woman. I don't even really know how. I just wanted
Mhm.
something like unique and individual. And I started liking the word sober. And I just started noticing. So I was following a lot of sober people on Instagram. And then in May, so then within those 6 months, so my husband and I had reconciled a few months after I'd moved out with my friend. And so around that time that I got the certification, I had moved back in with him. Meanwhile, we had decided that like I wanted to get my own apartment, and I just felt like I needed that independence, and that figuring like I needed to figure out me and who I was. And if I was drinking, if I was to stop drinking, or if at that time when I was making that decision around May, was I going to stop drinking for him or for me? And I
Mm.
really needed to figure that out. And I also knew that if I came back home at that time, like a couple months later, I felt like I could have gone right back into the slump I was in because it had only been a couple months without drinking. And a couple months is a very long time to someone who's brand new in sobriety. And it's also a very sensitive time.
Mhm.
And the more sobriety you have behind you, the more days you have and the more time you have, in my opinion, the more confident you're going to become and the better equipped you're going to be to handle situations. But I did not feel like I was ready. So I
Mhm.
signed that lease. That was for a year. And it was crazy because it was just at the same time that like we were talking about like we can do this. Like we can do this together. We can work together, we can figure this out. And so I said I'm signing the lease. And so that was a big turning point too because I needed that. I needed to be by myself. I needed to figure out what I wanted in my life. I needed to figure out, like, okay, now I'm this new person. Sobriety gives you a completely different look on your life. It is like a new life. It
Mhm.
is this different light, and it really opens up so much. And in my with my services as a sobriety coach, one of the first activities we do is something called the Wheel of Life, and it's like a pie chart, and you number where you're feeling in your life between 1 and 10 with each piece of the pie. So, for example, personal well-being, health and wellness, finances, and what you end up noticing is that most of them, after, you're not thinking about it, but when you look at it afterwards, you start realizing that the majority of the numbers being low are because of drinking. Even though you don't think that, even if you're not drinking every day, all day, if you're the one who feels like you have to drink because you're a mom, or if you feel like you have to drink because your friends are drinking, or because your husband drinks, or because your wife drinks, or whatever, you know, a lot of people drink because they think that's the norm. And me and everybody else in the sober space is trying to show you it is not. It is not the norm. We're trying to change that and show people that it is so cool and so much cooler to be sober and live in the present.
Mm.
So then so when I got sober and I moved back in, we were engaged and married within 6 months. And again, just more proof and evidence of the amazing life of sobriety that you never realized that you may not have realized you were missing. And then we went to Spain in July of 2022. So at that point I was sober for 2 years and 2 months. And I was not really involved in the community as much as I was in the beginning of my sobriety. I posted a few things here and there on social media, but not too much. And I wasn't coaching anybody. Like I said, I wasn't ready for that. And I just kind of, I just was not involved in any sober communities and not doing what I think I should have been doing. But it's okay because now I know. And so because I think that's exactly why what happened. So we are on in Barcelona. We've never been to Europe. It is the first night in Barcelona. I spend a ridiculous amount of money and we go on a sunset cruise. I mean, the water is like blue and purple and pink and gorgeous. And we're on a private boat with 3 or 4 other couples. And because we had just gotten married as well, even though it wasn't our honeymoon, because we had just gotten married, people were like, oh, very excited, asking lots of questions. And this very, very kind girl asked if she could take pictures of us, like do a photo shoot and for like free. And it was beautiful. And right before that, the captain said, all right, everybody, well, it's time for me to let you know what we have to drink, blah, blah, blah. And he's saying, blah, 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 Prosecco. And I just was like, what? Prosecco. And it was like I had found a golden ticket. right? And it was just crazy. I just remember like being speechless and just remembering being so excited, but then also being like, wait, I don't drink. So what do I do? And I just remember asking my husband, and I said, I remember stuttering too. And I was like, I want to have a drink. Should I have a drink? And he was like, I can't tell you what to do.
Mm.
And I was like, but you have to, right? Just like back in the day when I was drinking, you have to tell me to stop drinking. You have to take me out of the bar, right? I was putting it on other people, again, not realizing I was putting other people in charge of me when they're, yeah, right. If you told me we were leaving the bar, I would probably tell you to, no thank you, in a very nice way. So in a very, cursing way, I would say. So anyway, so I ended up drinking, and I just had
Mm.
one glass, and that was it at that time. And then we did the photo shoot, and it was just so like unbelievably amazing, and it was awesome and just so gorgeous. And we're in Europe, and you can't see land, and we're in Spain for the first time, and we're with all these other beautiful people that speak beautiful languages, and they're all from all over the place, and I'm just in awe. And my husband and I are both just like, this is amazing. And so as we're getting back to the dock, I said to my husband, I said, I think I'm going to have another glass of Prosecco. And he was like, I think you should wait. And immediately I went back to back in the day where I was like, screw you. Like,
Mm.
I'm not listening to you. You're not in charge of me. You're not going to tell me what to do. And at the time, of course, I didn't really think too much of it, but I just remember being really mad. Like, who do you think you are? When he is my husband, but it wasn't. And I had just asked him, right? Like a couple hours prior to that. And I did wait, but I just remember like reflecting on that, like that was the moment where I was like, no bueno. Like that is not good that that's where my head went.
Mm.
And so then we ended up getting off the cruise, and we ended up enjoying the rest of the time in Spain. However, the drinking didn't stop. It became a secret from first his family that we were with in Europe, and then it became a secret to people here in the States when we came back. And I was not telling people, and it was just kind of something like, I can do this, I can moderate, I can drink at this point, I can drink at that point. So I was selective, and I definitely did drink less because I knew what sobriety was like, and I didn't want to be hungover all the time. But I basically, in December of 2022 and then February of 2023, I just had made two awful mistakes. And I was like, what am I doing? What am I doing? And after the situation in February of 2023, I haven't drank since then. And with that situation, I just was so disgusted by myself, like with myself. And, my husband had shared like what I looked like and what I was saying. And like, it's not who I am. It's not who I want to be. And I said, forget it. Like, I'm done. And right around that time, Jessica from A Sober Girls Guide had reached out, and she was like, hey, I wanted to know if you wanted to be a sobriety coach for our circles. And I was like, well, so I had to like fill her in what had happened. And it was literally like a week or two after that situation happened in February. And I feel like everything happens for a reason. And we the bottom line was that I wanted to do it and she wanted me to do it, but realistically she wanted to give me some time to think about it. And
Mm.
I felt like, Michelle, this is your time. Like, this is your answer. You can put your sobriety coaching into practice. You can start with the support circles. that you're going to have every Tuesday. You're going to start with that. And now you have not only sobriety behind you for 2 years and 2 months, but also the moderation, right? You have more experience, and now you know what you want, right? You know that that's just the life that you're no longer, want to live. And that was the eye opener for me. And then, so in July of 2023, so actually like a year ago, I started working for her support circles. And that's really what started it. And then the way the women were responding to me, and I was like, I felt like I was in a mirror, right? I was talking to these
Mm.
women who, that was me. So it was so perfect because I was like, this is exactly what I want to do. I want to help people who are like me in that situation. And now I get to help them. And it was so easy, just like with teaching. It's so easy because it's a love and a passion and a dedication. So she asked me to be on her podcast, like right around that same time. She asked me to be on her podcast and said, will you do an episode about moderation? And I told the story about what happened in Spain and a little bit about me, kind of like what I just told you. And all of these women started reaching out to me on social media. And I was like, I'm doing it. So I turned it into an LLC and I started getting clients right away. And what I love about what I do the most is that I don't want women to feel alone. I felt so alone. I want women to know that there is such a beautiful community. And I really just got so involved in the sober space, and all of these people that I had followed and gotten to know back in 2019, 2020, when I had first gotten sober, had blown up on social media, which is so beautiful because that means there's more people like looking at their relationship with alcohol. Obviously, the pandemic either put people one way or the other as
Mm.
well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what's been happening since then. And then I just have immersed myself in going to events and starting to do my own events and partnerships with mocktails, and I want to start a podcast and I want to create a course. And it's opened up so many doors. And honestly, it's more about the relationships I have with people, because there's so many of us, and seeing this trend as well, and it being a trend, and more people being like, and seeing mocktails on menus and non-alcoholic things popping up in bottle shops, which are basically shops with non-alcoholic drinks. And that space is huge. Like, you can go almost anywhere and get a drink without alcohol in it. And I'm not talking about a Coke or a Diet Coke, although that's absolutely your fancy if that's what you like. But you can still like do this. I now know that I can have seltzer in a wine glass and I still feel like I'm involved, because we all want to be accepted, right? We all want that inclusivity. We all want it. And I think that mocktails is definitely a big part of it and is helped people.
Mm.
Did I answer your question? I'm sorry, that was a lot of information.
It's okay, totally fine, and thank you. I have several thoughts on what you share. And the first thing that I want to comment is how in that time that you decided to go and do actually the coaching for this group was like a mirror
Yes.
situation, because it's like how you help others and at the same time this situation is helping you. So absolutely, it's lovely how sometimes what we do for a living or for our business is helping us in different layers of our personal life, and not just the business itself, right? So, how do you think telling your story has impacted your business? How sharing your story has an impact in your audience and in your potential clients?
I think the biggest thing is for women to hear a little bit of themselves in me. And I'm very honest and vulnerable, but I think it's important because there's so many times and so many ways in society where it's just like, be quiet, be quiet. Let's just see the perfect side of you. Let's not see you without makeup, or let's not see you, you are, perfect, and we're not. We are so many different things in society, and the more we accept each other for who we are, the better it becomes. And can you ask that question again? Because I want to make sure I answered that first part too. I had a response.
Yeah. So, how do you think telling your story has impacted your business?
Yes, yes. So, and also I would say with my clients, right? So with my clients, I can relate to them. I know exactly what they're talking about, which it just kind of becomes a laugh because, like for example, I have a client who got herself who had a few days under her belt, right? She had a few days sober, and then she went out because it was her husband's cousin's birthday. And we laugh because why are we going and drinking at our husband's cousin's, right? It's just an excuse to drink, right? And it's funny because we've all been there, right? And or we say like we're not going to drink, and there's so many of those. There's a million times that I was like, okay, I'm not drinking. A few days would go by, I would drink. Same thing. It would be this like repeated pattern, and when you're in that pattern, somebody like me can help you break that cycle because I've been there, and you're going to tell me what's going on with you in your personal life, and I'm going to be able to say, okay, this is what we need to change a little bit. And nothing major, like little there we're creating little tiny habits that are going to help, right? Three of my favorite resources that I share are mocktails, Quit Lit, which is like sobriety memoirs, and podcasts, because I feel like those are really helpful, and they are either easy, free, cheap, accessible, and nothing, it doesn't have to be like this big thing, right? But what you end up doing is you turn sobriety into a lifestyle. And I also want people to know not to be scared. And that's what it is. We're afraid of the unknown. And I promise you, like, Google sober curious, like, just start immersing yourself in that sober space. And, I just really stay in the sober space with drinking. I'm not, I did not, thank God, have a drug like other than alcohol. I did not have an addiction problem. So I do not, really, I'm not really in that space. So whichever space you're in, I would say to put yourself in that, like literally just Googling sober curious or sober events near me. I mean, I know so many now, like, and that's the really cool thing. Like I've gotten to interview five authors in our book club with a Sober Girls Guide. I've been able to now be on 5 podcasts, and I feel like the reason why I'm doing it is because the biggest thing is I don't want women to feel alone. I want to know that it's okay to feel this way. I want you to know that it's okay to not have a drink. I want you to know it's okay to say no. I want you to know it's okay if you do. Then we talk about, okay, so what happened? It's okay. Right? You're not going to feel shamed with me. You're not going to feel embarrassed. It's a very open, honest, beautiful conversation about you and what's going to work for you.
Mm. And also, I can imagine how, for you, when you are sharing your own story and what happened in that travel, it's like you are allowing them to share how they might also fail
Yeah.
in their attempts and how it's okay to share it. And here in the podcast and also with my clients, I see how sharing that vulnerability of our own stories usually is helpful to create this safe space where people can open up and can really be true to themselves and not try to hide or pretending that they are everything figured
It's a
out
safe
because
space.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's what that's what it's about too. It's like that open, safe no judgment, and people, I mean, I've had women say like, I was afraid to tell you I drank. And but even though I've said numerous times, like, I'm not mad, it's okay, like, we're gonna figure this out. But people just are concerned with feeling, I think maybe they feel like they're letting somebody down, but it's okay, right? Like, eventually there is gonna be that point where that drink you have is going to be your last drink. And hopefully in a good positive way.
Yeah,
Because, and
yeah.
that's the other thing, there's so many negative things that can happen. There's so many moms that are feeling like they have to drink, like the mommy needs wine culture. I mean, I've talked to so many women over the years and just people in general about it because I love talking about it.
Mm,
Sobriety and education, they go hand in hand. And then
yeah.
that's the other thing. Like, if you don't believe me or if you want data, just research the science of drinking. That alone is a big eye opener.
Mm,
There's This Naked Mind by Annie Grace. There's Quit Like a Woman by Holly Whitaker. There's How to Eat to Change How You Drink by Dr. Brooke Scheller. These resources are there to help you. And then there's also other like fun chill books like We Are the Luckiest, which is a beautiful memoir by Laura McCowan, or The Dry Challenge by Hillary Scheinbaum, or Dry Humping by Tawny Laura, or Unbottled Potential by Amanda Kuda, or Ruby Warrington. I could go on and on and on, because once you get in that space, it's like it sucks you in, but in a good way, in a good
mm,
way, in a good
nice.
way.
Cool. So, can you recall a specific moment when you realized how impactful was to share your personal brand story?
Hmm, I think after I was on Jessica's podcast,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was that, because I was just telling a story to her, like you and I are doing. Nobody else was there. It was just me and her having a conversation. And the amount of people that reached out afterwards just like filled my heart.
Mm,
And after those support circles, too, like every Tuesday, I get to talk to those women. And it doesn't matter if there's one or 25, every single one of you matters,
yeah,
right? You matter, you're important.
yeah.
And yeah.
So, something that I would like to ask you is, um, there were some unexpected challenge that you
Hmm.
have faced when sharing your story. Some unexpected challenge there.
Um, Unexpected challenges when I did share my story.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, I mean, honestly, the only thing that, I mean, honestly, it's been such positive feedback. That's the other really great thing. There's been a little bit of negative here and there, like, why don't you call yourself an alcoholic? Or, you should have just stopped drinking or something like that. But, honestly, I feel like I fill myself with so much positive with sobriety that the negative just doesn't impact me
Mm-hmm.
anymore. And I think on social media, you definitely deal with that. But the second someone says something like that, I just block them. Like, I don't have time, or I don't want to spend my time arguing with somebody or being controversial about a topic I feel passionate about. And I don't judge anybody. If AA works for you, that's amazing. We're all on our own journey. Then I'm just sharing mine. You
Mm,
know, I know plenty of people in AA, but that works for them, and that's all that matters, right? It's like, it's like with teaching, it's the same thing, right? Like, there are some things that we cannot change about ourselves. You know, we might not be able to change like the way we look or the way we dress or the color of our hair, or, you know, we talk about this in kindergarten, we talk about this in elementary school. It's the same lesson. You know, you have to be kind, you have to be open and respectful. And, you know, I now, it does not bother me when people drink around me, because I know that I don't want it and I don't need it.
Mm,
I think that's the biggest thing, is I've learned my self-worth. I've learned that I am important. I learned that I do matter. And I'm still like, I think we're all still working on ourselves. And yes, I've experienced a lot of trauma, but that trauma made me who I am today.
mm,
You know, if that trauma didn't happen in the beginning of the pandemic, I might still be dealing with my drinking. You know, if my husband didn't say I can't do this anymore and I didn't move out, I may still be drinking. I may have gone down a darker road because I feel like I have that personality,
mm.
you know? I think that that would be it. And I think that I noticed something recently. I don't think about drinking. You know, eventually, I promise you it goes away, but it's like a breakup. Like the boyfriend you thought you were going to talk to every single day, or the boyfriend you were going to marry in high school, or the one that got away, or whatever, right? Like maybe not necessarily the one that got away, but someone you used to know or someone you were really close with, and now you're not anymore, but your life is okay without them, but you feel like it's never going to be.
Mm.
So I think that that's a way to think about alcohol. It's like a breakup, and it's going to be hard in the beginning. And you might have to say no to things for a little while, but it's to protect you and yourself and show you what you're worth and
Mm.
how important you are and how beautiful you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And I believe that also through sharing your own journey, you can make people see how that journey can be for them and how there are different possibilities and you find your
Absolutely.
way. And this is something also in business. So there is not just one way of doing
That's right.
things.
That's
And
right.
you find a way that makes sense for you, for your lifestyle, for the kind of things that are important to you. And might be different from someone else. And it's okay.
That's right. It's okay,
Yeah.
because that's what works for you.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know that the name of the podcast is Who Cares About My Story?
Yeah. 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 I love
So,
it. I love that name. I told you that before. It's great.
thank you. So, what could you say to someone who is wondering who will care about their story?
More people than you think. I would say more people than you think care about your story. I think it goes back to like what we think about in our own heads and what we're worth. And you know, starting my business, look how many businesses are around, right? Like any kind of decision, like it doesn't seem like it is, but Google it. Like Google what you think nobody cares about, and you're going to find plenty of topics on it, you know, or plenty of conversations around it. You know, especially nowadays, we're so lucky with the internet, and it is important, and it might not be important in your specific circle, but it might be to other people, right? I have tons of people who are going through this, and their family's like, why, you don't have a problem? It's not up to them to decide, right?
Yeah.
I have a woman who's new in sobriety, and she went to a family reunion this past weekend. I can't wait to talk to her tomorrow, but she was very nervous about going, right? But the reason why is because she was feeling alone, but she came to that support circle and we were like, no way, like we know exactly how you're feeling. And that's where that's where it is. And even though how much I know in the sober space, there's still tons of people, millions of people that still don't know about it. And that's why I'm telling people about it, because it is this type of thing where people feel like it's something they have to do or there is no other option. And I'm telling you that there definitely is other options. And it's also like with teaching, right? Like you and I might not, like if somebody gives me something and gives us the same thing, we're not going to use it the same way. You know, we are all different. That is the biggest thing about education and sobriety. What's going to work for me might not necessarily work for you. I have a client who does not like mocktails, so she does not use that, right? It's okay. What works for you, right? What happened to you? What do you specifically need? And that's why the program that I offer is tailored to you and what
Mm,
you need.
amazing. So
Thank you.
now a question that I like to make to all my guests. What part of your personal brand story surprises people the most?
I would say just the word like sobriety coach, not knowing that we're out there. There's still, you know, a small amount of us, but I think just the excitement that I give around sobriety and glamorizing it and not shaming it and like saying like, "Yay, look at life. Like it's so much better. Like I loved my life before and now I love it even more." And I think that's the biggest thing is really just like people are like I had gone and was a vendor at a women's expo in New York in March. And I had gone to plenty of events and like went to different things in big cities, but I was like, and the city I went to where I was the vendor, it was a big deal. It was a big city, but still I was like, I'm curious. And so many people were like, "What? A sobriety coach?" And I was like, "Look, yay." And like I had tastings of mocktails and I have the books I like and I have like and I'm just like a sparkly open energetic person as you know anyway. And I'm like, "Yay, like this is life. Like life can be like this." And not where like you have to drink because you're tired, you're lonely, you're you know, it's the sun is the sun is shining, it's raining. Like I was drinking for no reason at all. I got to that point where I did not need a reason to drink. And there are so many other things. And I would say like the biggest thing that I tell people is the connections with people. If you and I were to have this conversation at a bar, with us drinking, where would this conversation be? It would not be as beautiful as it is right now. Right? How many people, or I say, like, how many people have you met that you thought were your best friends that night at the bar? Who the hell were they? What did you talk about? You have no idea. Right? And I don't want to miss my life anymore. And I think that was the big thing too about grief. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. Nobody could have ever predicted what happened. And it's still like I'm laughing because it's still so unrealistic. It's freaking crazy. So like, and we have all had trauma and shit happen to us. And it's like, think about that. Like you never thought so and so was gonna, I never ever thought I would be sober. I did not realize that like there was another part of life that I was missing.
Mm.
And so many, I ask people often, especially on Instagram, like, what's your favorite part of being sober? And the people with kids are like, I'm a present parent. Like, I know what's going on with my kids. I'm reading with them at night instead of having like two glasses of wine and being like, fuck, when is this story over? I just want to go downstairs. Right. It gets to the point where like it's hard in the beginning. I'm not saying it's not. It's very hard in the beginning. It's a habit you're changing like slowly over time, but we're doing it for you and what's going to work for you. So I think I got carried away. I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you did.
Okay.
Just before we wrap up, there is something else that you would like to add that maybe we didn't cover or we didn't mention yet?
I would say that just try it. Just try not drinking. Just it is dry July. I'm not sure when this is coming out, but any month or any day, like it doesn't even have to be a whole month. Like just try not drinking for a couple of days and just see how you feel. You know, it's not going to be peaches and roses in the beginning, but just wake up without a hangover and see how life feels. Just that, like just even just that thing, or try to have a mocktail or try to moderate. You might be someone that can moderate. I'm not someone that can, and knowing yourself, listen to that like little knock, right? Like if you're listening to this podcast and you knew it was about sobriety, there's a reason why you're listening to this, right? Like why are you doing that? Listen to your body, listen to your heart, because that's what makes us who we are. I'm pretty sure we only have one life and we never know when it's going to end, especially with all this awful stuff going on in the world. Like anything can happen to any one of us at any time, you know, and we all know this. And so I think that's just like, how do you want to live your life? What kind of life do you want to live? And it could be just something very simple. Like, I want to wake up tomorrow 3 minutes earlier, you know, and living in the moment, I think is really important. Of course, setting goals, but knowing like if you're feeling like you want to have a drink right now, it's going to pass and you can do something else. And there's so many other things to do. And being present and connecting with other people that you might not have realized. And yeah, I mean, it changes. You might have to change your group a little bit, but there's so much support. And if you can't find it, contact me and I will help you find it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, talking about that, we are going to share the links, but
Sure.
also please share now with us how we can learn more about what you do and connecting with you.
Sure, sure. So my name is Michelle, but my Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and website, I'm very fortunate, is Sober Virgo Woman. So it's sober, Sober, Virgo, like the horoscope, VirgoWoman, Sober Virgo Woman. And that is my name on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and my website. And my email, same thing, very lucky, Sober Virgo Woman at Gmail. And I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you're dealing with, where you're going. And my biggest thing is to, like, if you're unsure whether you want to sign up for coaching, if you're not sure, you can just book a discovery call with me. Like it's just you and I chatting on the phone, just like Reme and I are right now. Like we're just chatting, and it's about you, and it's free, and it's no charge, because I would have wanted the same thing. And I can point you to many different directions. There's plenty of resources. And also, if you want to get to know me more, I was on like 5 other podcasts. You can look on my Instagram. My Instagram, I would say I'm most active on. And listen to an episode about me and get to know me a little bit more. And follow me. Just see what I'm doing and see if it's something that's interesting to you. And if you need something else, like reach out to me and I'll do my best to help you.
Thank you very much for
Absolutely.
all this conversation, all the insights and resources that you mentioned. And yeah, and for offering that help to people listening to us.
Yes,
So thank you very much
absolutely. Yes,
for
absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to Who Cares About My Story, the podcast on how sharing your personal brand story can impact your business. If you found this episode valuable, consider subscribing or leaving a review. Your feedback means a lot. Did something resonate with you today? Please share your thoughts on the podcast platform or on your socials. I would love to hear from you and give you a shout out. Just tag me on Instagram at Reme Mancera. I can't wait for you to meet our next guest. Until then, remember, your story is relevant and worth telling.